Welcome to all of you. A very good evening, or if you are in some place where it's still morning or afternoon, wherever you are, wish you a very warm welcome. So today's session for the next 1 hour, I'm going to make sure that I keep it as engaging as possible. I try to answer as many questions as possible, but I would like you to be patient with me. So what we are going to be discussing today is which of the two formats, right? Whether taking GMAT online, or in other words, taking it at home, or whether going to a test center, if it is available. Obviously, this is under the condition that it's available at the city that you are in, and with the situation changing almost on a daily basis, there have been some cancellations as well. So we will assume that you are getting an in-person appointment. If that were to be the point, what would you choose? How would you end up choosing? What are the parameters that work for you? Before I get into that, a quick introduction. My name is Arun Jagannathan. I am the founder of Crack Global, one of India's leading GMAT coaching company. We also work in MBA admission space. In case you have my student, or in case you have seen my video on YouTube, you can let me know in the chat window. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I am connected with obviously a lot of my students who over the last decade have made it to many of the top schools. So connecting with me would essentially give you an access to a wider network. So hopefully we are able to benefit each other. And you can also write into me. My email address is arunj@crackfootball.com. Right, so that's so much about for me. But getting into the point, what we will do is we will be discussing various things about the whole process. I will not be looking in the chat window. In case you are not able to hear me, then please maybe you can let me know. I hope there are no technical issues today. I do have a backup, but I might be off for, let's say, a minute or so in the event the power goes off, right? And please don't post questions while the session is on, because honestly, it will be very hard for me to keep a tab on the questions, right? So after the questions, after the session is over, after I have my points, let me see if there are any pending doubts you have, any questions you have. I'll be glad to take them towards the end. And I would also request you to have a paper and a pen with you, so that if there are any notes that I would like you to take, I would also want you to kind of reflect upon certain questions that I'll be asking you today. Right, so what's on the agenda? The agenda is I'm going to give you 10 factors. So what I want you to do is take a piece of paper, and in that I would like you to list down the factors. You can create a column. So you can create online as one column. You can create in person or at the center as a second column. And for each of these 10 factors, we will try to see if there is like an advantage or disadvantage, right? One thing I want to announce at the outset is that this could be a subjective factor, correct? So I'm going to be telling you what a subjective factor is, right? Like, for example, if you have a place in your house where you know that the power and the internet would not go up and you will not be interrupted, okay, or there is not going to be a lot of external sounds, then obviously, online becomes an option. But if these factors are not there, then in person would be your choice. So what is the situation at your end is something that you would need to look at. I'm also going to be giving you some GMAT test day performance tips. So while working with students at Crack Global, this is one of the things that we look at, because see, after your theory gets over, right? So that is what I would call as the improvement phase. Improvement phase is where you don't know a particular rule or a formula. Once you know how it works, you basically see a little improvement in your scores. But many of the times, students plateau and they are not able to perform as well on the day of the test. And that's because there are certain strategies that you need to have. So I'm going to be sharing that. And I'm also going to be giving you a general guideline of, if you're looking at doing an MBA now or later, what are the steps that you need to be looking at? What is it that you can follow? Right. So let me first get on to the factors, as I said. So I hope you have your paper and pen with you, and you are creating the column so that it's easy for you to track, right? So I'm going to be listing 10 factors. Some of them would favor the online, some of them would favor the in-premise. So let's take the first factor. So the first factor is convenience. Like I think in this, online has a huge advantage because I'll tell you why. When I say convenience, what I'm saying is the ability to book a schedule, a test date, correct? So it's very convenient. You don't need to worry whether the test center near your place is open or not. You don't need to worry if test center opens and then decides to cancel your slot, correct? So all of those things you don't need to worry. And also, if you look at it, GMAT has also made the process a little easier in order to incentivize you to, consider the GMAT at home. What they have done is they have given certain perks, right? So one of the perks is that though you get to see the score later, the perk is that you can apply to as many sports as schools as possible, and also they have waived certain fees that they earlier had. So I think you can use that as a huge advantage, correct? So I would say booking dates, online GMAT wins. So 1-0 is how I would put the tally as. Uh, the second thing is the actual GMAT scores itself. So in the case of the test center, you get to see the GMAT scores upfront, whereas in the case of online, you need to wait about 7 to 10 days before you see the scores. Now, even there, there seems to be a slight tussle. So this might make the GMAT in the test center look better. But the thing is that you can actually, kind of send your schools after you see the score report, right? In the case of GMAT online. Though you see it 7 days later, the schools to which you send your test scores, you can send it to them after 7 days, right? So the problem with taking it in the center is the five free tests that you, five free schools that you need to pick, right? Maybe after seeing your GMAT scores, you may want to change those, correct? So that may not be possible. You need to pay extra for that. So that's the difference. So again, I would say this is more of a tie. I wouldn't say one wins over the other, but the online does seem to have an advantage. So I'm going to say 2-0, okay, online versus classroom, in premise. The third thing, and this one is clearly a subjective factor, right? So, what is comfort for you, right? Like as I said, if you do have uninterrupted, power supply, if you're, fairly sure of the stability of your internet connection, if you know that you're not going to be disturbed, nobody's going to come knocking on your door. It's a comfortable place without a lot of noise. Then taking it home just makes it a little, it's just psychological. You're in that same comfort zone, right? So I think that does play a role because when you do go to the test center, correct, there is some amount of stress that you see with regards to being in premise. Now, here is one important factor that actually goes against your, the in center, which is which is what happens is you need to be wearing the mask at all times, right? So that, according to a lot of people, is something that they don't prefer, right? So just make sure that you are used to taking the test with your mask on, right? So that is what the test center provides. So I would say again, online has an advantage. So I would say 3-0 in favor of online, correct? Fourth factor is online does not have the AWS section, right? If you are going to be taking it in the test center, you need to have you need to attempt the AWA. Now, some people say, does that mean that my GMAT score is less appealing than someone who has a AWS score? To be very honest, nobody really looks at your AWS score, right? So even if you get a 6 or a 5.5 or a 5, it doesn't really matter. So I would not really bother about it. So I would say even if you had to write the AWA, you need to have a template, right? So one thing that I tell my students, have a template, make sure that you are kind of going through it, right? So you shouldn't worry, but as such, because online does not have AWA, I would say it has an advantage. So I'm going to say 4-0 in favor of online, right? Fifth, this is where offline, or rather the test center, has an advantage. See, what is happening with online, you have only one section sequence, right? So you have quant, verbal, and IR. Now, the problem here is you do not get a break between quant and verbal if you go with the online, correct? Whereas when you go through and I'm going to be showing that shortly, but when you go through the test center, you have option to also start with verbal. Okay, so there is a third option where you can start with AW and IR, but that's an option that most people tend not to choose. I'll talk about it. Okay, so that's where I would say online has an advantage. So I would say it's 4-1. Now comes to the rough work, right? So a lot of GMAT is about quickly making down certain things. Like for example, one thing that I say in verbal is that write down A B C D E in a vertical way. So as you're going through each answer option, you should be knocking off the options that are wrong. And wherever you want to hold on to answer option, maybe you have your own notations, right? I feel doing so will help avoid a lot of silly mistakes, right? And sometimes you just go back to the answer choice that you have already eliminated, correct? And it just wastes your time. So now, in order to do the rough work, one thing that went against the GMAT online so far was that they had this problem of having only a virtual whiteboard. Okay, so a virtual whiteboard, we have a separate blog on that on our website. I also have done a detailed video on how you should be able to maximize the virtual whiteboard. So I'm not going to be doing that today, but I just wanted to tell you that the online virtual whiteboard was the problem. People did not have a physical whiteboard. What happened? The numbers plummeted. Okay, GMAT took notice of it because very clearly people were not choosing the GMAT online test. In fact, there was a petition on change.org, right? I have raised it with GMAT myself, saying that look, students do not think in their mind, right? They can't use a mouse to do rough work. You need a paper and a pen. So finally, they basically, with all the pressure, they were able to introduce the physical whiteboard. Again, the physical whiteboard, what are the measurements, what are the dimensions, all of that is specified on the website. Again, I have got a video where I speak about what are the dimensions. We have even given some links on Amazon.com where you can go and buy this. Right? Now, let's talk about the main thing, which is when you have a physical whiteboard with you and you also have a virtual whiteboard, I think it actually is, according to me, is equivalent to having the scratch pad in the test center. Okay, so the test center, what will happen is you'll be given a scratch pad and you'll be given a marker, right? So as you kind of fill it, by the time you're done with your booklet, you basically raise your hand, the proctor will come and essentially issue you another scratch pad. So scratch pad is a lot easier to use because you have more pages, correct? So when you have your own whiteboard, the only thing you need to make sure is that you know where to rub, right? So maybe if you keep practicing with some questions, I think using the physical whiteboard would definitely be, at par, correct? So I think so far with section selection, we have the 4-1. So this is, I would say, 4.5 and 1.5 because it's a tie, right? I would say both of them have their pros and cons. So, okay. Now coming to the seventh point, which is proctors, right? Now the proctors that are employed by GMAT for this, at home live, the interim solution that they came up with. They seem to perhaps lack some training, and this is because of all the feedback that we have heard from students, and we have also seen debriefs on GMAT Club about how there were issues where the proctor were not aware of certain rules, and also the fact that you have to actually turn on your camera, right? So throughout your GMAT test, your camera will be on. It won't show the proctor's face; it will show your own face, right? But sometimes even that can be a slight distraction. Then the proctors also, you have to take pictures and you have to upload. They have to feel comfortable that the environment is safe, which again is very subjective. Um, so net, what happens is that experience might be slightly more cumbersome than going to a test center. See, when you go to a test center, you realize that they have they got the process down to a pat, right? Which means they will exactly tell you what you need to do, and it's pretty smooth, correct? So my take would be very clearly the in-center test would win over here. So I would say 2.5 and 4.5, right? That's the scores right now. Um, so Wi-Fi trouble and power cuts. Now, what happens is GMAT, if there is a temporary failure, it will be able to recover from the point you left off. Okay, so the timer will also start from that time. Your question, whatever your question number 7 or 8, it will start. Right. So my take would be that if you are fairly confident, right, that there will be no power cuts or Wi-Fi, because what we have seen is that students, when they find that there are some issues, sometimes the net suddenly drops. You have no idea. It has never happened in the last 1 week, but just today, your Wi-Fi just went off, or there was a major power cut, right? So these are things that could go against taking the test online, right? Whereas when you go to the testing centers, they have UPS, they have backup. So to a large extent, it is less troublesome, right? So over here also, I would say taking it in the test center would win. So right now, I would say the scores are 4.5 and 3.5. Right. I hope I'm doing the math right. So it's 4.5 and 3.5. Retaking the GMAT. Now, till recently, GMAT online, which is the one at home, you did not have the option to retake the test, which meant that you could have taken the online test only once. However, the good news is starting the end of September, so I have officially got the confirmation from GMAT on this matter that by end of September they are going to be restarting they will essentially allow for another retake, right? So you basically have two takes. Right now, it's only one retake that they are saying will be possible. So you have basically two attempts. Whereas if you take it at the test center, you have 8 lifetime attempts. Whereas in a calendar year, you can take it a maximum of 5 times. But really, honestly, you don't need to worry. See, if you're studying for the GMAT correctly, GMAT is like a root canal operation, right? You want to do it once, you want to do it right, and you want to get it out of the way. So that's where I feel, again, the test center wins. If nothing else, it is just that it allows you the luxury of taking it multiple times. So I would say uh, it would be a 4.5, 4.5. So it's a tie. So we started off with online taking a lead, but we are now at 4.5, 4.5. Let us look at the last point and let's see if there is a feature for us over here. So expenses, just $250 for the test center experience, $200 for online experience, right? So there is a $50 expense. There is a difference. $50 in terms of Indian rupees, for example, is 3,500 rupees. Correct. Now it's up to you to think whether 3,500 rupees is that big a difference. Plus, also remember that you will save money because now you are not going to be sending it to other schools. Correct. You have, if you are taking it online, you will basically be able to apply to as many schools. You can send your GMAT score. So I think that is also going to save you some money. So if you think that that is important enough a factor for you, because what I've also not considered is what I would call as the weighted average, right? So are some of these factors more important, right? That call you need to take. For example, one factor could be so significant for you that it may overweigh everything else, correct? So that's something that you need to judge. But I hope this gives you a good sense of navigating through whether you should take GMAT online or at home. If you ask me, tough call, it's a tie. As you see, we have considered so many different parameters, but really it all depends on how you feel about it. My take would be definitely take the GMAT mock tests. Just get a sense of how you are as a test taker. I think your performance as a test taker, how you as a person behave, I think also plays a huge role in this decision. Right? Couple of things to help you with the GMAT performance. Again, I just wanted to let you know that I will not be checking the chat window at this point just because I want to focus on what I have in front of me so that I can add value to the content, and then I will come back and make sure that we spend some time going through the questions. Right? In fact, I've kept significant time reserved for that. Now, coming to what are the strategies? So, one of the strategies that I would suggest is if you are deciding to take it at the test center, ensure that you are also thinking through the section selection order. Right? So, as I told you on the online GMAT exam, the section selection is fixed. You have quant, verbal, and IR. But if you're taking it at the test center, you essentially have three options. So the first option is you take AWIR followed by quantum verbal, which is the conventional. So if you look at it, actually option 2 and option 3 are available only over the last 1 year. If you look at it, traditionally GMAT has been option 1, right? Which actually made verbal very tough because people used to get to verbal and they were drained, right? Because the test itself was about 3.5 hours. Because the number of questions were also more. You had 41 questions in verbal, you have 37 questions in quant. Then again, last year they have reduced. So I just want you to understand that this is really a huge advantage. If I had shown this option to someone 5 years ago, they would have actually, been so excited because starting off with verbal means that you are attacking the section with the most fresh mind, right? So you are alert and you are able to give your 100% to verbal. If you think you are very good in quant, and if you think you want all your mental energy for verbal, right, and even with depleted quant, mental energy you can do in quant, then option 2 would be the way to go for you. Okay. Now, IR and AWA, I will talk about it shortly, but right now, let's assume that it doesn't really matter. We are just looking at the first two sections because your 800 score on the GMAT is not going to be based on IR and AWA, correct? It's going to be based only on your quantum verbal scores. Now, there is another option, which is option 3, which is you can start the GMAT with quant, and then from there, you can go on to verbal, and then you take IR AWA. Now, what happens over here is that if you think you are strong in quant, I'm going to give you two options, okay? You think you're strong in quant, then also you can start with option 3. The rationale over here is, if I'm strong in quant, then I can breeze through quant, get the confidence, right? Without depleting a lot of my mental energy when I get into verbal, right? So then I'm all, geared up for verbal. Whereas if my verbal goes a little poor, then it may impact my mood on the quant section. If I were to go to option 2, if you're strong in quant, that may be another way you can look at it. That if my verbal goes up, my quant, which is my strong point, can also get screwed up. Whereas in option number 3, quant is my strong point. I start with that, and I kind of finish it off with verbal, right? So that is my that is my third option, first kind. Now, there are people who are strong in verbal. Okay, for them, it is want that is the troublesome factor, right? And they are like, if I get a 15 quant, right, I will manage a 40 plus in verbal. For those people, I would suggest that starting with quant would again help because again for looking at the similarity of the same group, if you are strong in a particular area, right, you know that even with depleted mental energy after quant, you can still perform well in verbal, right? So that's the strategy that people, typically my students, have been using. The second thing I wanted to tell you is you have to understand that the test itself is approximately 3 hours. If it's a test center, then it's 3.5 hours. So how you manage time on the day of the GMAT becomes important. right? So apart from the section selection, I also want you to think about it. I'm going to give you two simple pacing charts. So I'll explain what a pacing chart is. So you see, I'll just try to use the, yeah. So I am, yeah, let me just use this. So now what I'm doing is in verbal, right? Let me just try to change the color, maybe make it black. So in verbal, what happens is that you are given 65 minutes and you have 36 questions. Now, the way I look at it is that your pacing for verbal should be approximately for every 9 questions, you should be able to do it in about 15 minutes. Okay? What it means is that if I'm able to run 4 such laps, okay, 4 such laps, I will be able to do 36 questions and I will do so in 60 minutes. Now you could say, Arun, but you have 65 minutes, correct? So what do I do with this extra 5 minutes? This extra 5 minutes can serve as your buffer time. What is the buffer time? Buffer time is when you initially start with the GMAT, you may find that there is a certain inertia that kicks in that makes you go a little slower, right? So, best for you to maybe utilize this time just to get you a start in case you want it. Or there are some people who feel that I'm fast when I start, but somewhere in the middle, I'm losing time. If that is the case, you can use this 5 minutes extra buffer over there also, right? But your pacing really should be, 9 questions every 15 minutes. So what I would like you to do is in your question, in your scratch pad or in your physical board, you can write these 3 numbers, right? Which means roughly by the time you're on question number 9 or you have completed question number 9, you should have 45 minutes remaining. The logic that I put over here is 15 minutes plus I have given you 5 minutes, assuming that you are consuming the buffer initially, correct? The next 9 questions you should be doing in 15 minutes, right? So remember that GMAT is a countdown timer. It's not a count up timer. So it will go from 65 back down to 0, right? The third marker that you need to look at is roughly by the time you are on question number 27, which is you are in the fourth quartile, you should have about 15 minutes left, right? If you are doing this well, trust me, there is not a lot that can go wrong after this, okay? Now, when it comes to quant, the logic is a lot simpler. You have a simple, 2 minutes. My suggestion would be to go, with the pace of, with the 2 minute pace, because what happens on quant also you'll realize is if you're really gunning for a Q50, right, your initial questions will be easy because it's an adaptive algorithm. The initial questions will be easy. But what you realize is as you get to the higher levels, your questions can get tougher, right? So what I would do is I would say by the time you're on question number 8, you should have about 45 minutes left, right? What this means is you have consumed about 16 minutes, right? Similarly, with about 30 minutes left, you should be roughly on question number 16. This tells me that, so far your pace has been maintained, right? And then with the last 15 minutes left, you should be roughly on question number 24, right? So if you are able to just keep a simple match, right? I think it'll just make it mentally a lot easier for you to track your progress, right? Let me just go ahead and remove this. It's 22 hours. All right. So let's get to where we were. So when it comes to IR and AW, one thing I wanted to tell you is that look, as long as you are able to get a score of let's say 5 in IR, and if you are able to get a 4.5 or a 5 in AWA, very honestly, I don't think these schools are going to really make a difference, or going to see a difference between a 6 in IR and a 7 in IR, right? So I think these schools are still not very sure how to use these numbers. they are comfortable using the 3-digit number, which is around 800, right? So if you get a 760, it's a rock solid score. Now, if you get a 4 IR, for example, you can explain it. See, any poor score you have in AWI IR, you can always explain it in the optional essay. So most schools, what they will do is they will give you a separate essay where they say, is there anything else that we should know about you? So you can always explain that. But anyways, I think you should be practicing enough. AWA, you should have, it down to, let me just try to see if I can erase this. So I delete this. All right. So one thing that happens in IR is, as I said, you are going to be given 12 questions, but you are going to be marked only on 8 of those, which means 4 are what are called as experimental questions or dummy questions. Now, the thing is, sometimes I've had students who have taken a risk saying that let me guess some questions, and if they are experimental questions, then I get lucky because 30 minutes is not a lot of time, right? So I would rather invest my 30 minutes solving 8 to 9 questions with a higher probability of getting them right than trying to attempt all 12 questions. Okay. With AWA, here is a simple formula you can use. You can use the 5, 20, and 5 formula, where you are spending the first 5 minutes ideating, thinking how it will fit into your template, maybe even typing out your template, right? Whatever it takes. Then what you do, spend 20 minutes writing the actual content that you have, to fill in for the template. And finally, what you do, last 5 minutes, you proofread. You make sure that you're not making any simple grammatical errors, or if any complicated words that you don't know, don't try to write if you don't know the spelling, right? So unnecessarily you will get penalized for that. So that's as far as IR and AW is concerned. So coming to managing your mental energy. So before the exam, during the exam, after the exam. So I'll just briefly introduce you to this concept. So the idea is that you have limited mental energy. Now, what is mental energy? Mental energy is the concept where, it's one of those things. It's one of those things that if you have a tough day at work, right, and your colleague comes to you at 7 p.m. and he says, "Hey, I've got a quick question for you." Right? So it may be a quick question, maybe it's a very simple question, but we feel so drained that we say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe we look at it tomorrow." So that's exactly what happens on the GMAT. It is very important that you ensure that you keep your passport with you. Want to make sure that passport is the only form of identification. Make sure that your name is correctly mentioned both in the GMAT registration and on the passport. Very, very important. Make sure that you know what are the snacks that you're going to carry with you. Make sure that you revise your AWA template, as I told you. Make sure that you don't stress yourself. Please don't do any office work before the test. In fact, my suggestion is don't even take a full-length test 48 hours before your actual test. See, if you are preparing for a marathon, you don't run one marathon a day before, okay, to prepare for it, right? So you need to give your body some kind of rest. So make sure that you are giving yourself ample rest. Make sure that you sleep well. Make sure that you wake up at the same time that you always wake up. At least for a week, make sure you're setting into the same schedule that you have on the day of the test. Even the day of the test, make sure that the time that you pick is matching your circadian cycle. So if you're a morning person, pick a morning slot. If you're a late evening person, pick, let's say, an afternoon slot, right? During the exam, make sure that you are, you know exactly if you're going to be going out, how are you going to reach the venue? Are you going to drive? Are you going to be driven? Are you going to catch a cab? Make sure that you follow all the precautions. You are going to be wearing a mask at all time. If you're taking it at home, enough time should be given for the proctor to do his song and dance routine, so to speak. So all of that would be things that you need to take care. In fact, one other thing that I would say is make sure that you keep your medications with you. Maybe you are asthmatic or you tend to get a headache. Maybe you want to keep just a aspirin or dolo or something, paracetamol, whatever works for you, right? Similarly, if you have specs, maybe you want to carry specs. I've already spoken about the snacks that you should carry. And after the test, whatever your scores are, please put yourself in a positive frame of mind. There is always another day to be lived. GMAT score is not all of it. If you have got a score, you want to get your profile evaluated, I'll be showing you some ways by which you could take some next steps towards applying to a school of your choice. Right? So I'm going to go to the last section now. The last section is really about the next steps, what you need to be doing if you want to do an MBA now or later. So the first thing is I would like you to learn more about GMAT, more about MBA, the whole process. There is a lot of information available for you on GMAT Club. Crack Verbal has a YouTube channel. We also have a blog. We have a website. We put out a lot of content. If you liked what I shared with you today, if you think that I can help you in this process, please do come to the website. I'll also be telling you how we can probably take this conversation further. I have classes on the weekend. I'll give you some information on that. Also try to see if you can get your profile evaluated. Again, I'll be giving you a way by which you can have our experts look at your profile, give you a quick 15-minute overview of what are those things in your profile that you should be careful of, right? So, there are some positives, there are some negatives, and you still have some time to work on your negatives. So we'll make sure that we can give you that. And then if you want to get started with your GMAT, we also have some resources, and we also have a full-fledged admission consulting service where we help you with your MBA applications to a top school. We have a panel of experts who are MBAs from top schools who actually work one-on-one with you to make sure that you're able to put in a winning application. So this is the link. So I just wanted to make sure someone is able to share the link. Okay, so Crackable does have an online option, so I just wanted to tell you about it. So if you like the way in which I teach, I have a more interactive session. Right now, it is just me talking, but when we sit and solve questions, there is a way in which I can transfer. So really, all my experience of knowing the GMAT, what I've really figured out is there are some frameworks, right? GMAT is a game to be played, right? It is like PUBG, right? Or maybe I shouldn't use the word PUBG now, that is banned in India. Fortnite, right? Or Call of Duty, whatever you want to call it. So let's say it's a game. What we have figured out in our experience is how to play the game, right? So we get a lot into the psychology of the test. We get a lot into how you look at a question. So you have to understand that many a times when you look at a solution, the solution looks very obvious, correct? After you know what it is. But then it is very important for us to get inside your mind and try to figure out why are you making those mistakes, correct? Because a lot of analytics, what it really tells you is what mistakes you're making. But why you are making those mistakes is where I think the key is, right? So just wanted to say that. And yeah, happy to take any questions. So let me know if there are any questions that I can take. I'll just go up and try to see if there is anything. So I just wanted to let you know that, as I mentioned, the link will be given to you if you are interested. I have a session tomorrow, and I'm going to be starting off with sentence correction. So in case you want to start off, you could. How widely available is acceptable is the GMAT online score? Our university is only accepting GMAT online score. No, I don't think it matters. See, once you get a good score, I don't think you need to worry about whether it's GMAT online or at home, right? What is more important is that you end up ensuring that you are perfect. So as long as you get a high score, you don't need to worry. Okay. So yeah, I see that Deep, who said that I put the GMAT online and I scored a 740. Excellent. Is there any difference in the difficulty level? No, both the online and the offline GMAT essentially uh, have the same question tool. They have the same algorithm, right? So that doesn't really matter too much, right? So that's how I would put it, correct? Um, there is one more, which is how convenient. So someone has just mentioned about the profile evaluation. So I'll just make sure that we just figure out, how it got missed, but we will ensure that we will try to get back to you. So we are a small growing company. We really want to help people. So if you see on the call itself, we will try to make sure that we are able to add value, right? So we'll make sure that we can update that. How convenient is the physical whiteboard as a substitute of scratch paper? See, Ashish, I would say order it from Amazon. It's about 1,000 rupees, and just try to take a test using the physical whiteboard. I think that's the best way for you to gauge how comfortable you are. Um, how do you avoid silly mistakes, especially when there is time pressure and you're speeding up? See, this is one of those things where practice is the key. The more full and tests you take, the more you are able to adhere and fine tune your timing strategy, which in turn means you also need to have a very solid guessing strategy. Where are you guessing? Are you guessing? Is it a blind guess? Is this a guess that is made before you get into the question? Is it a guess that you make after reading the stimulus? Is this a guess that you make after eliminating a couple of answer options? Or because you're not confident of the right one? Why are you guessing? Where are you guessing? So a lot of it is around optimization, and that comes when you take full and practice tests, right? Um, so, how do the proctors distract us? It is not a question of distraction. The point is, if I go to a test center, I basically tell them, hey guys, you tell me what to do, right? And those guys, they are experts. They will figure it out. They will take me, do the pumping scanner, get me inside, all of it. But what is happening is when you take it at home, these proctors, they'll have to first, you'll have to take a picture, then, sometimes the power may go off, right? The proctor, if you ask him questions, there have been cases when I don't know now whether the proctors have gone through some kind of a training process, but earlier there were issues with the lack of knowledge on some basic things, right? Um, so that was my question. How do you do that? Do I need to make the whiteboard visible in the camera? No, the whiteboard that you're writing, no, that can be kept with you. But before you start writing, you need to show them what you have, right? It's almost like a Western movie where, or a mafia movie where they put the gun on the table and they just, make sure that there is no weapons with you. So that's all they are checking. They'll make sure that the table that you're sitting, you can have a glass of water that should be kept in a clear glass. So they have specifications around it. So don't worry. Pretty much there is nothing for you to worry too much, right? Like somebody by mistake comes also, I don't think they will have a problem. What should be the starting point for the preparation? My take is the Crackable course that I'm talking about tomorrow. If you are coming in, this weekend, 4 hours, right? So we're going to have sentence correction, but you will see how sentence correction actually gets tested on the GMAT. Many a time, what happens is people get lost in the mechanics, right? They get lost in grammar. But what you realize is GMAT is not about grammar. If it were to be about grammar, they would have hired they would have, maybe admitted your high school grammar teacher, correct? But they don't want the person who's knowing grammar, right? So it's a lot more to do with logic. It's a lot more to do with the intended meaning that gets conveyed, especially on tougher GMAT questions, right? So that's what I would say is maybe the first starting point that you need to have, which is understand what the test is really. See, maths and English are just the facade, right? It is not really testing you on maths and English. It's testing you on something far more deeper. It is testing you on logic. Harvard Business School is saying a guy who deserves to be sitting in my classroom, right, needs to be able to read a passage on social science and answer an inference question based on it. Now, whether that is the right thing or the wrong thing, but that is what B schools are requiring as a mission, correct? So, what are some of the good books that you would recommend? My strong recommendation would be to stick to the official material. So you have the OG, so that is must-have resource. So so I would say pick the OG, the official guide. You can pick the verbal review. You can pick the quant review. You also have what is called as the advanced questions. So all of these will give you thousands of retired GMAT questions, right? So these are real, actual GMAT questions. Okay, so I would suggest that you look at doing this. Plus, if you do want to buy, there is a for about $90, I think you can buy the GMAT exam pack. So the GMAT exam pack 1 and 2 by default is free, but you can buy 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, right? And these tests, remember, can be taken multiple times. So you actually get about 12 tests in the GMAT exam pack itself, right? According to me, there are two different things. One is the practice questions. According to me, your practice should be of official questions. The reason why I stress on official questions is because there is a certain logic, there is a certain method to the madness. You have to understand that GMAT is a highly standardized test. What I mean by that is there is a standard deviation of plus minus 29 points, which means the algorithm is so accurately calibrated, right? It is very precisely calibrated. How do they get to this level of standardization? They get that only if the questions themselves are standardized. So what you realize is official GMAT questions have a certain sense of finesse, right? So there is a certain standardization, and what we are trying to do on the GMAT is not, we are not trying to really improve our English or, we are trying to score higher on the GMAT. That's my basic, logic. That if you are trying to score higher on the GMAT, you need to understand what are the templates that GMAT has for you, right? So you will see as you solve more official questions, you will start identifying certain patterns and templates that will get repeated on the GMAT. Okay. When do we know that we are ready for the actual GMAT test? So let me do this. Let me kind of go to the next slide over here. So I just wanted to thank you for your time, and I just wanted to let you know that you can follow Crackable. In fact, we have put up a lot of our videos on YouTube, so make sure you follow us on YouTube. Now, the question that was asked is, today, I do not know, let me just change the color. So, yeah. So, today, I don't know. So, this is, let's say, today, correct? And you don't know when you should take your GMAT, right? But what I have found is that, you can always pick a date, okay, to pick the GMAT, right? So pick the GMAT date is the date where you commit that by this point I'm not going to unnecessarily delay and I will pick. Now this milestone could be based on the fact that you have, let's say, if you enroll for Crackable course, I will tell you what we do. So we basically have the classes on the weekends, and during the weekday we essentially have homework of questions from OG that you need to prepare. Now, this roughly goes for about 2 to 3 months, right? So, one thing that you could say is after the course ends, or 1 week after the course ends, I will take a GMAT prep test, right? A GMAT pack exam pack test. So there are free ones also. So you can take, let's say, GMAT exam pack one, and at that point you could say that is when I'm going to pick my GMAT date, right? So you can commit to another date, which will essentially help you, make this problem a little less, you know, overwhelming, right? Um, What if there were internet issues? See, as I said, if there is a break in your internet and you are able to kind of your power comes back in a couple of minutes and you cannot join, you don't need to have a problem. They will allow you and they will continue the test from where you left. Okay, so don't worry. The software has that inbuilt. Okay, there is a technical term for it, but I don't know what it is. But it makes sure that it repeats from where it is. Taking this question from Tanya, it is I'm currently preparing for the GMAT for the last 1 month. Last I gave a sample, couldn't manage the time, got tired, it scored 550, what to do to improve. So, Tanya, the way I look at it is that when you take the GMAT, there are multiple reasons why you could have not performed well, right? So, the first one is conceptual clarity was very low, right? So, if you don't have conceptual clarity on certain topics, GMAT is not a bag of tricks, right? So you need to know your rules, you need to know your grammar, you need to know your formula and maths. So maybe that is one area. The second area is what I would say is there a problem with your application? In other words, is there a problem with the technique that you're using? Many times, what happens is people end up having a flawed technique. So, I'll give you an example of a flawed technique. Let us take reading comprehension. Now, reading comprehension, as you know, has two components. One is where you read a passage, first, and then you end up answering questions based on it, right? Now, many times, what I've seen is that students may take a good 4 to 5 minutes to read the passage, make very clear notes about it, right? Create maps about it, and then they hit the questions. They solve about the questions in the same time. So they take about, let's say, another 5 minutes, right? So what is happening is they are taking about 10 minutes per passage. But what is happening is there are four passages on the GMAT, which means 40 minutes are being spent for about 14 questions. Right? What does this mean? It means that if you have 65 minutes and you are expected to solve 36 questions, right? You have already taken up 40 minutes and you have solved only 14 questions, which means in the next 25 minutes, you are expected to solve 22 questions. Now, what happens is if because your approach to reading comprehension is flawed, what it means is you are always getting yourself in the situation, and sentence correction cannot save it. You end up guessing, and you end up making a mess out of it. So, very important. Third is what I would call as your test day strategy. Correct? How well you are able to guess according to me, can play a difference of plus minus 30 to 50 points. Okay, I've had students who have scored consistently 640, 650. Just with the technique, they are sometimes able to touch 700. Right, and similarly, students with a lower 700, wanting to get to a 760. Again, there are test strategies where you can actually get that kind of a boost. Okay. Yeah. So other thing that I would like to say is one of the philosophy that we have in Crackable is it is not always a problem with this. In fact, I hardly spend a lot of time. I quickly give you an overview. I feel all of us know this, right? All of us know this. The problem really is kind of mapping it over here and here, right? So doing a lot of questions without having a direction can feel a little overwhelming, can feel a little tiring. So I understand I can empathize, but that's where in Crackable, I believe, in the idea that, simplicity is the best. Don't try to do too much. GMAT is not the test of the doer. GMAT favors the thinker, right? The person who's able to think, who's able to understand what is going right and what is not going right, right? So that's all I have. Yeah, so I think the GMAT prep test is probably the exam pack is probably closer to the real test. As I said, it depends on whether your 700 was a worst day performance or a best day performance, right? Ruchika asked the question. I gave GMAT online, got 15 points, but verbal went 22, whereas I was getting 34. I finished the quants within 30 seconds. Yes, Ruchika, that is one thing that I've heard from people, which is the lack of break between quant and verbal. But I still feel that that shouldn't be that big a difference, right? But still, it depends on a case to case basis. But I would say you should probably prepare better. Uh, yeah. So they give it before IR, Nitish, right? Cool. So I think we are coming to an end to the session. I really hope that I was able to add value. I really hope that you enjoyed the session. I hope I was able to share something that help you. Right. Thanks a lot, and I really hope to see you in my session over the weekend. Till then, take care and have a great rest. Have a great weekend. Right. Bye bye.